Hey everybody, Jacob's Painting here with a new tutorial, and we're doing some bolt action. I'm going to show you guys how to paint some bolt action US infantry in a really quick way to get your models looking awesome. I've got all my infantry guys on some pieces of cardboard with this double stick tape. It's pretty handy. And we're going to start off with priming. I got my Stynylrez black primer here, and I'm going to be going back and forth, giving it short little sprays, and I'm going to give this basically 2 coats of primer. I'm going to do all over the model, let that fully dry, and then do it again because we are working with some metal models and that primer has a little bit of trouble getting down into the deeper recesses. Alright, now that we have these guys primered black, we're going to do a double pre-shade method with a couple of different colors, starting off with some red-brown primer from Stynylrez. And I'm going to be priming these guys with our pre-shade at about a 45 to directly over the top angle to the model, just making sure that I'm making short, light passes so as not to blast out that black primer. We want that black primer to be in the deepest shadows. Okay, so now that we have these guys with our first pre-shade of the brown, I'm going to pull out my smaller Sotar 2020 airbrush with some white primer, again from Stynylrez, and we're going to be focusing the tops of the models, so like top of the arm, shoulders, helmet, the knees, things like that, and we're just going to very delicately target those areas with the airbrush to get a secondary pre-shade. So we have some black in the shadows, some brown on top of that, and then some white on the very tops of that. And that's going to give us a triple shade of contrast when we lightly spray our colors over that. And to start off with those colors, we're going to use Bazooka Green from Warlord Games. This is part of their new rapid deployment system. And I've got this back in my larger airbrush because we're going to be doing this to all of the guys. I have about 30 models here that I'm doing all at once. And I have that paint thinned down with some flow improver, and we're just going to put that all over the models, making sure not to get it too wet, so that way it doesn't pool or spiderweb. We just want to do light, short passes until we get that Bazooka Green built up in a semi-transparent coat. For our next color, we're going to pull out US Army Green. Again, this is from Warlord Games. And I'm going to pull out my detail airbrush one more time, and we're going to target the tops of the models. So these areas that we primered white, we want to go over directly with that US Army Green. So that green is nice and powerful, but we still have our super dark shadows and a little bit of that brown showing through, so we can get these guys looking like some olive drab US soldiers that are a little dirty. After those guys are dried up, I'm going to pull out our next color. It's going to be US Army Webbing. This is a really great yellow khaki color. And I'm going to pick out all the guys that have those iconic World War II jackets, the khaki jackets they used to wear. And I'm going to target the jackets only with this color. I'm going to try to avoid as much overspray as I can, but you can see that I'm going to be getting like the arms, the shoulders, the backs, a little bit of the front of the chest if I can. If I can't get to it without getting too much overspray, then I'm just going to leave it in shadow and not even worry about it. So again, on all of these models, I'm going to be targeting all the guys with the khaki jackets, and then we'll move on to the next step. And that's going to be US Gators Brown. And this is a really light, almost ivory color. I'm going to mix that about 50-50 with the webbing color, and we're going to do a little bit of a highlight on those jackets. It's going to look a little too bright to start off, but we want it to be too bright because I'm going to be putting a wash on these models, which will dirty it back down. After that, I'm going to focus on the guys with the big heavy wool coats. And according to my reference, these were some sort of brown color, sort of like a darker medium tone brown. So I'm going to grab our Mahogany from Pro-Acryl, thin that out to a nice thin consistency so I can just kind of bring that brown over as a stain on top of all of the colors that we've built up already. So that way I don't have to do any highlights. It's already done. You just stain this brown over top of it. Next, I'm going to grab some pitch black and some bazooka green, and I'm going to have just a little bit of that black in there so that we have that iconic super dark olive color for the helmets. The helmets were a little bit too bright after doing our color workups for the uniforms, so I want to darken those back down by using this color mix to lightly paint a couple of thin coats over top of it to get those nice dark army green helmets. Next, I'm going to pull out some Pro-Acryl Bright Warm Gray. This is a great color for some of these off-white snow-colored aspects of the uniform. There's a number of guys in the collection that have those helmet colors that were that sort of eggshell off-white gray color to blend in with the winter environment. And so any of the guys that have those types of helmet colors, I'm going to do 2 quick coats on top of those with the Bright Warm Gray. Next, we're going to focus on their exposed faces. I'm going to pull out some Pro-Acryl Tanned Flesh, thin that out with a little bit of flow improver so I can just gently glaze this flesh color over their exposed faces. And it's probably going to take about 3 coats because the flesh tone is pretty light and it's going over top of some darker green colors that are left over from our initial workup. So just be patient, take your time, and you can paint faces really easily with this paint. It's really nice. Next, I'm going to pull out some Game Color Sombre Grey, and I'll be painting this really thin, again, as kind of a stain over their gloves and their neck wrap, head wrap kind of things. I looked at the box art and it showed gray, so that's what I'm painting. After that, I'm going to pull out some heavy brown. This is a great mid-tone khaki color, and we're going to use it for all of their pouches and canteens and belts and things like that. The sort of tan khaki US webbing gear. Again, going to use this as kind of a stain. The paint is super watery, so just be careful. Don't load up your brush too much with that paint and then gently pass it over those areas to kind of stain that khaki color on top, because we already have those pre-shades doing most of the work for us. Next, we're going to work on their rifles. I got some Mahogany Brown from Model Color here. I'm going to thin that out quite thin and then do a thin pass over all of the wood sections of their rifles to get us that nice kind of wood brown color. Again, I want this to be sort of a stain, like you notice a pattern here, because all those pre-shade colors are doing most of the work for us, so I don't want to go too opaque with this paint. I want some of that pre-shade to darken areas and brighten others so that I don't have to do any highlights after a wash. We're going for super fast, ready to go models here. And then we're going to do the metallic aspects of their gun with some scale 75 black metal. Just thin this out. It's painting metallics on easy mode. You've seen me use scale metallics a bunch of times. You know how much I like them. Alright, last step before the wash, I'm going to pull out some of our mahogany and some pitch black. I'm going to mix those two together to create a really dark brown earth tone color for the ground that they're walking on, the texture paint that we have on their bases. Got this pretty thinned out, so it's going over super easy. You know, it's just easy thin base coat for some dirt. Like, nothing special about it. Alright, these boys are ready for a wash, so I'm going to pull out the Army Painter wash system. I've got some military shader, some brown shade, and some shadow shade, or brown wash and shadow wash. It's the same thing as dark tone and strong tone, it's just brown and black. I'm going to mix all 3 of those together to create a nice sort of field, dirty, dark wash to make these guys look like they've been in the business for a while. I'm also going to mix in some liberal amounts of flow improver and a couple of squirts of water so that I have a semi-thin, dirty wash for everybody in the unit. Like I said, I'm painting like 30 of these guys all at once, so I want to make sure that I have enough wash and it's thin enough to slip and slide all over those models without staining too heavy in any given area. When you're applying this wash, just put it all over. Don't grind down on the model with your brush too much. You want to be light, sort of dabbing the wash on there and letting it do the work for you so it slides all into those details. And if you have too much in any one area or a big puddle is forming on the model, make sure to just wick that away with your brush before it starts to dry. Alright, these guys are now ready for the table. The wash on their bases is still a little wet, but that's okay. I'm just going to let that set up overnight, and then they're pretty much ready to go. But we're not 100% done with this collection. The next thing I'm going to do when we revisit our infantry in the next video in this series, so I'm going to show you guys how to take them to a higher level, a little bit higher finish, and we're going to be doing a lot of stuff to their bases to make them look nice and in theater, so that should be a lot of fun. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll catch you next time.